So this is what our plate looks like for the first set extension on the DVD. And I'll go ahead and turn on the set extension. I'll just turn it on and off a few times so you can take a look at what changes I've made, what we're getting out of the set extension. And we'll go ahead and I'll show you how the set extension was created and how it was comped, and how you would create a shot like this for a feature film. So the first step in creating this set extension is to grab frame 1 of the plate and bring it into Photoshop. So I'm going to duplicate this layer so that I have a duplicate of this tower, and quickly mask it out and slide it over to an area where I think I want to put the third tower. So I'm just going to feather this thing out, get rid of some of these hard edges. I'll come back later and mat it out a lot more neatly, but in the meantime we'll just go with some broad strokes just to get a composition happening here. So I'm going to keep one layer separate as the water, just because that layer is going to have the ability later to move. So I just want to show you that you can apply quite a dramatic color correction or a hue shift on these buildings. So if the director wanted to, say for example, have 3 different colored buildings, we certainly could address that without having to paint one from scratch. The important thing to remember is that everything we do to the building regarding a hue shift could be done as well to the water down below. Obviously we're going to want to have the reflection in the water share the same color space as the building that is causing the reflection. Now this water here is matted in Photoshop, but I'll show you later on how to use the same matte in your compositing software and ultimately get everything to move as it would for a feature film. So now I'm going to go in and scale this tower down. Just want to try and achieve the look that this tower is a similar size but just a little farther away than the other yellow and red tower. Now if we wanted to, we could also change its hue, and our ultimate goal could be that we have 3 different colored towers. I'm just trying to show how far you can push color range and also get that water to match. Now of course the rooftops you might want to put a separate color shift or hue shift on the rooftops, but overall because along with shifting the color and hue in the building, the sky turned a kind of distracting color. Now I'm going to go and focus on this building up in the top left. I'm going to just try and remove this completely. Some people might opt to clone this out or paint it out. I think one of the easiest ways is to just grab a similar piece of sky from an area nearby in the plate and copy it over. Once you do that, you can just mat out other objects like these leaves. And if we use a soft brush to mat this, it'll make the transition between the new sky and the old sky a lot less apparent. I'm just going to mat these leaves the way I did the other ones. Paint that back in. So now I'm just going to go in and try and trace out the rooftop and feather it 1 pixel. That way I can get rid of the piece of sky that was covering it up. Now this patch, I'm going to leave it sharp on the right hand side just so I can do a color match and try and get them to match. Now I'll go in and clean up these edges and soften that. The reason why I left it sharp in the beginning was that if you can make a sharp edge disappear, then it certainly won't be noticeable once it's softened. So let's go back to this tower that we've added and take the hue and color shifts off. And in return, I'm going to go to the yellows and the oranges within the other buildings. I'm focusing mainly on the yellow horizontal elements. So we're going to call this layer make yellow, and then we're going to create a second one that will work on top of it, but it's going to take the rooftop elements and all the little cantilevers and turn them kind of red. Okay, now let's start matting out everything that we don't want to shift to yellow. So we'll just go in there in between these elements. Just try and keep all those horizontal brighter areas yellow. Really at this point in time we're just going to keep the real bold horizontal pieces. And really roughly we'll just soft matte out the water. So turning the yellow matte off, now we can go into the the hue layer that turns everything orangey red. Now the rooftop's looking pretty noisy. As we shift all that color around, it starts to actually appear noisy and even a little soft. That might be acceptable down at the bottom, there's not as much noise, but we'll have to go back up to the top and readdress that. So I'm just going to go into that red layer and rename it. I'll try and keep the Photoshop document organized. And then what I think I'm going to do is try and steal one of these red rooftops from one of the buildings. We'll duplicate that, call the layer top, slide it down, try and line it up. I'm going to try and line it up with the building that used to be blue. We don't need all that stuff at the bottom, so we'll just fill that with black. And we'll see what we can do regarding matching the rooftop, the new rooftop, to the old building. And further tweak the yellow values. And we'll just go and duplicate the yellow hue and we will separate them. So we have one version for the tower and one version just for changing the and what we'll also need to do is try and tweak some of the finer values in that water reflection. You can see in the water here, where the reflection used to be blue, that we're getting a few spikes of magenta and kind of a red color. We'll try to get rid of this one just by matting it out. And then that one in the middle of the yellow reflection, we'll have to treat that later on. I'll show you how to do that sometime shortly here. Might be best to do that in the comp itself. So now I'm just going to go back into the yellow hue shift and just try and paint in a soft blue building was a little bit shorter and squatter. I just thought we should mimic that with the red roof. Also just try and change some of these values around in the left added building here, just so that all these buildings aren't exactly the same. In real life, even when people try to match materials and lighting in several buildings or in a complex, typically we end up with a little bit of a color mismatch. A little bit of imperfection adds to the reality. And now I'm just kind of sitting back looking at the entire composition, trying to place that third building in a position that sits nicely with the other two. Now I'm opting to move this light just because we want it to match to be moving in the final comp is a really important issue when you're working in the film industry. For a lot of people who do set extensions and create environments and map painters, for those people who are starting out, I notice a lot of people who really are just focused on the still 2D artwork, and I would encourage you to really focus on that. That is very important, but focus on other things just as well. Things like getting your shot to move, working with live action plates that have moving water or moving elements of some sort, and just overall, getting some dynamic movement in your shot, because really that's what you need to know how to do in the film industry. So now I'm just going in and removing some of these really obvious copies that came from the previous building. Anywhere where there might be a pair of lights or a triplet of lights, I'm just going to try and change it around a little bit. Anything that's really telltale, scaling pieces up and down. Sometimes we'll paint it out, sometimes we'll clone it out, and sometimes we'll just paint new elements. When doing set extensions and work like this for feature film, it's really important to develop that skill that allows you to work with elements that come right from the plate, just like this shot, and things that repeat elements that existed in that plate. Basically, in today's visual effects industry and in the film industry, directors are wanting to show off their environments more and more, and so it is very important to be able to go in and manipulate a scene like this. Often productions will shoot a plate at a location that closely mimics what they are trying to achieve in a film, but it's not 100%. So that's when they call upon us to tweak what we can in the environments, in the sets, and try and enhance it to be something better, to be usually what the director is envisioning to tell his story. So let's put our attention into the top of this tower. Let's go in and paint some extra little elements around the corners and enhance these little lit up areas. Every little bit of change that we add to the top here is going to help us out in making sure that the audience doesn't sense that this is an exact copy of the original building. So I'll put a little bit of light, a little bit of clear story windows around the corner here, and paint in a little bit of glow, some warm light up on these rooftop elements. As well, let's put a little bit of one or two pools of light up here. Just lighten up the values, pull some of the values out of the adjacent elements. And I'm just painting with a 20% brush here, a little bit of a soft brush. So each stroke adds to itself. Same thing up here, maybe a little bit more rim light on these ribs at the top of the spire. We'll just brighten that up at the top, and I think we'll call that good for now. I'll just clean up some of these layers and get ready to move on to the next step.